Hi, and welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast series. I'm Nina Lockwood, the founder and chief exec of Intuitive Talent Solutions. We work with leading transport organisations in the UK and bring them together with a diverse and talented candidate network for interim and permanent roles. The people who know me know that I like to immerse myself in good conversation. And over the course of the podcast series, I will be joined by some exceptionally talented leaders from the UK transport sector to talk about their careers, the industry, leadership, challenges and opportunities, and much more besides. I do hope that you'll join me and that you'll be inspired by my fabulous guests and their intuitive insights. I'm delighted to welcome Sarah Boyd, MD of Lothian Bus, to the podcast today. We talk about entering the transport industry by accident rather than design, and then going on to build a stellar career and a very strong reputation as a fantastic leader and ambassador for the industry. I absolutely loved this conversation. I really hope you enjoy it too. Sarah, a very, very warm welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast. I know we've had this booked in for a while, and it's a joy to actually get to the point where you and I are having this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me.
So Sarah, you're the MD of Lothian Bus. That's the day job. In true kind of Intuitive Insights tradition, I'm going to ask you to rewind the clock for us, take us back to the beginning of your career and share with me and the audience, where have you come from? What's your story? Why transport? Why the job that you're doing? How did you get there? And ultimately, what does a day in the life or a week in the life of the MD of Lothian Bus look like? Over to you.
Great, thank you. I guess I should start by saying it was by accident, not designed for me. So in my kind of final years at university, I studied maths and finance, and I always thought I'd go down the finance route. And so actually, when I came across the advert for the Stagecoach graduate scheme, whilst I was intrigued, I didn't really have much understanding. I grew up in Dundee, so close to Perth, so I had that kind of awareness of the Sutter family and everything, that had been achieved with Stagecoach. I guess it was that intrigued me rather than the actual transport side to start with. But actually then having gone through the interview process and been offered a position after I left university, and then that was the hook for me. It was then the starting to get to know some of the people in the team, starting to understand a bit more about the company. And so that was 2002, I went into the graduate scheme, and I spent then the first year in Fife as a trainee before moving to Manchester, where I then went on to do the depot manager job in a couple of different depots. So I ended up there for a few years, came back to Scotland and took up the position of operations director, first of all for West Scotland and then for East Scotland. So that's the 11 years that I spent in Stagecoach. And then I moved to Lothian. In 2013 to be the head of operations, and I've now spent 11 years at Lothian.
Right. That feels like, your roles at Stagecoach, having joined as a graduate, and then within, I think that's a relatively short space of time to be doing a director level role. So is that usual? Is that kind of, or were you very much a kind of a shining star that was whipping your way through the various different levels in terms of roles to get to that director level position?
I think that's not uncommon. I think Stagecoach were brilliant at if you're good enough, you're old enough. And I think actually they were the support that was there, the kind of the practical side, so that you have a job to do, mixed with the developmental kind of work that ran concurrently, not just with the graduate scheme, even beyond that. I think there was so much opportunity, I would say, there to be kind of grasped. And so it was an incredibly short period of time. And I look back now and think, wow, at 26 years old, if I came across a director how would I be with that person now? And actually, yeah, I guess when you're the person going through it at the time, you're only really see it from the inside out, like any of us
Yeah.
can. I think I was so lucky to be surrounded. I've worked with so many of the kind of, I would say, the best people at Stagecoach. I was really fortunate to have that experience. And then also, I've always been a person that would learn from the people that I don't want to be like as much as the people that I do. And so
Yes.
actually, it didn't really matter, or it doesn't really matter to me, what kind of person someone would be. I can get, I can still find some kind of richness in that, I would say, even if that's quite
Yes.
challenging at the time.
Yeah. That's really an interesting way of looking at it. And I definitely agree with you. I think certainly as you're moving into a leadership position, I
Yeah.
genuinely think there's as much about what kind of leader, when you're considering what kind of leader do I want to be, there's some kind of there's the natural leader that's in you. So you're starting obviously with some raw ingredients. But then as we learn in those early stages of your career, it's very much a kind of what works for me, what do I like being on the receiving end from a leader, but just as importantly, what do I not like? And therefore, what am I never going to do? Because I know how that feels to be on
Yes,
the end of
absolutely.
that. Yeah. So when you look back now on that first stage of your career with Stagecoach, is there anything that stands out for you in terms of the things that you did that you would definitely recommend other people to do? And so when you advice for somebody going into a graduate program, what are the kind of the winning ideas or the winning strategies that you employed that you think helped propel you into that director position so soon?
I would say being open-minded. I think that really helps. So I I genuinely relish the opportunity to spend time with lots of different types of people from different walks of life.
Mm,
And I'm so fortunate now, you asked about a week in the life of, and that actually now involves so many different types of people and so many different types of communication then. So I think right
yeah,
from the start, that chance to be working with bus drivers, working with the management team in the company, dealing with people externally, if it was local authorities or customers. I've had huge opportunity to just engage with people, from
yeah,
all across, if you like, in terms of their, the kind of perspective that they're coming from. And I think that teaches me still every day. You don't know what you don't know. And I think that's something I hold really quite dearly. And it's only once you get speaking to someone that you can start to, understand or develop your own thinking. And so actually I think because I learned very quickly that actually it wasn't about buses, it was about the people and, the so many different groups that kind of are part and parcel of running a bus company or running any transport operation. I think actually that's what hooked me and has
mm,
kept me all these years, because no 2 days are ever the same as a result
yes,
of human beings being, so diverse.
yeah. I guess as well, having gone through, and this, I might be asking you to repeat what you've just said, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Having done 11 years in transport and then going with Stagecoach and then moving to another transport company with Lothian, was there ever anything in your mind at that point when you knew you were ready to go and ready to kind of go and experience life somewhere else and develop your career somewhere else? Was there any ever thought in your head that you would go into a different industry sector? Or do you think transport, like so many people I speak to, once it's got you and it's not letting you go?
Um, I think certainly at that point, yeah, there was nothing that would have taken me in a different direction then. I think the opportunity to learn and in one place and then to hit the ground running in another, I don't think that can be underestimated. And
Yeah.
so, and even within, Lothian, so joining as head of operations, it was then a number of years before I became operations director. And
Mm,
actually, I guess in some people's minds, because it was said to me at the time, that was a step back. I was an operations director at Stagecoach and I came to Lothian as head of ops. that for me wasn't a step back. That was a chance to join another company to get right into the technical detail of, how operations works at Lothian before then progressing again, back to being operations director and now being managing director. So actually, I think what I've done is develop those skills and then really had the opportunity to hone them, to challenge myself, to evolve, I think, in terms of both my thinking and also my way of doing things. And I think getting to do that in that kind of hit the ground running kind of way that I did at Lothian, I think absolutely has been so beneficial for me.
Yeah. This is really great advice for people who are, I think, it's front of mind for me at the moment because my daughter's just started her final year at uni.
Okay.
And so she's having this whole kind of what am I going to do? What big girl job am I going to have? And what's that going to look like? And where should I go? And what should I do? And she's getting really wrapped up in needing to find the perfect one. And I'm kind of, I think you just need to get a graduate job. I think you just need to do that. And it might not even be in an industry sector like you said. It was kind of, you hadn't it wasn't like a big burning desire to go and work in transport. There was an intrigue around the family that had built this business, which I would love to explore that in a bit more detail. But what I've been saying to my daughter is like, just go somewhere and learn. And in the process of that, being in a job, you start to identify what you enjoy, what you're good at, what you don't enjoy, what you're not as good at. You're learning all the time, aren't you? You're learning, you're challenging yourself, you're evolving. And those in your 20s, that's the time to do that, isn't it? And
absolutely.
And be developed by your first employer.
Yeah, I think I can remember that pressure, and it's a huge pressure, isn't it? Probably more now than it was 20 odd years ago. But actually, it's back to that saying around it's not so much the destination, is it? It's that journey that you're on. You might end up working in the same industry or job for your whole career. I think more and more now that's unlikely. But what you pick up along the way is then this, path that starts to build your understanding of what your next step might be. That and it's back to that. Sometimes you learn as much from the people that you don't want to be like. Equally, you can learn as much from the situations that you think, well, maybe this isn't the role for me, and maybe I do need to look for something. So I think you're spot on. It's just about immersing yourself, isn't it, in something, and then taking from that whatever it will, offer.
Yeah, just get in there. And it was something I had the absolute joy of having one of these conversations with Anne-Marie Purcell, who you'll know from TFGM and the B Network. And she said the advice she gives to her young adults, her kids, is that just get a job. Just go and do a job, because you'll get there, you'll learn as much about doing the job, you'll learn about yourself. So exactly what we've just been saying. So I think this is good advice. And I think for the three of us, kind of getting to where you've got to as part of a plan or not part of a plan, it all just evolves, doesn't it? Your career evolves as you go along. And I'm saying that, I guess that's an obvious question to ask you is, was there a plan? So at the beginning, when you went into Stagecoach, there seems to be two very, very diverse schools of thought on this. People who say to me, no, there was never a plan. I've just followed the opportunity. And other people who say, oh, yeah, I knew exactly where I wanted to go. Like one of the train operating companies MDs, Mark Hotwood, he said to me, I knew from the age of 4 what I wanted to do.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, okay, right, blimey, all right. That might be more about the trains than kind of managing director of Great Western, but he knew from the off, and there was a plan. Where were you on that, Sarah? Was there a plan, or have you just kind of gone with the flow?
So, ironically for me, and I do love a plan, like anyone that knows me knows how much I love a plan. There was not a plan, and there still, I would say, is not a plan in that sense. So I'm actually quite philosophical. So I have a strong sense of when something's right for me or not. I would say I can trust my gut instinct. But actually, my only plan is to work hard, to really enjoy what I'm doing. And I will say, or you have to have more good days than bad, otherwise it isn't the right thing for you.
Yes.
To really enjoy what I'm doing and to work hard. and actually just to then go with the flow from there, which, yeah, does seem a bit ironic when it's me, and I do usually have some kind of
So I am going to ask you to expand on what a day in the life or a week in the life of the MD of Lothian Bus looks like. But I am intrigued around this kind of the Suter family thing. So what do you think it was for you at that young age that intrigued you enough about them and their business to want to investigate a graduate position with Stagecoach?
So I think it comes back to that work hard and you'll do well. So
Right.
the rags to riches story, if you like, that is the rise of Stagecoach. You look at how hard Brian and Anne had to work. They were there themselves on the front line, driving the bus, serving the customers, and they built it from there. And so that for me, anyone that's prepared to get their sleeves rolled up, get stuck in, work hard, have fun along the way. I think that was what really intrigued me. That appeals to everything in terms of my core values, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's why I was a good fit right from the start.
Yeah, interesting. So, what does I guess I'll leave it to you whether it's a day in the life of or a week in the life of. What does life look like now for you as the MD?
So yeah, I guess if I just reflect on the last few weeks that I've had, so I can't not start by saying that Lothian won Bus Operator of the Year at the National Transport Awards.
Yes,
So
congratulations.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Just so
yeah.
good for our team. I think when you look around and see, and we've got now nearly 2,600 people working really hard, taking the rough with the smooth. It's, as in any transport related world, we're dealing with so many different situations, people, all sorts of things can happen to conspire against you on a daily basis. And so to see our team here work the way they do, pull together on a daily basis the way that we do, to see them then, that kind of recognition, I think has been fantastic.
That's brilliant.
So that definitely has been a huge thread through the last few weeks for all of us here. Beyond that, I've kind of already I guess, alluded to. So Lothian are locally owned. So we have 4 local authorities as our shareholders. So I do spend, a fair amount of time dealing with the people that work in our shareholders, both in that context, in the kind of board governance sense, but also in the sense of they are the local authorities. So they operate the roads, and we work with them as the one of the public transport operators in their areas.
Yeah.
And then within my own world internally, I am very hands-on, and so I like to be out and about as much as I can be. I try and eat my lunch in the canteen most days. Just that kind of thing where you're always in touch. And I know myself when I need that kind of day where I need to be out there either traveling on the bus or speaking to people or being in one of our travel shops, because I get that sense of, there's been something going on that's kind of, taking me away from all of that for a period of time. It's just, for me, it's always about just getting back to that reality. And those are always the best days that I have where I speak to our people. There's always a gem that comes from a conversation with someone in our, organisation.
Yeah.
So I try, and my time is, split with so many different things. And I think one of the beautiful things about Lothian, I would say, is that we are both operating company and group head office structure. And so that brings a huge amount of kind of autonomy, I guess, and the privilege of having the ability to make decisions at all levels, whilst kind of triangulating the things that sit within that so that they all make sense. I say that to our team regularly. The buck stops with us. We have to get this right. And so actually, I think that makes my days so different, and so interesting as a result.
Yeah. I think that how you describe that when you're out and about and you're with the team, and with the people who are doing a brilliant job on the front line. I think it sounds to me like you very similar to me in that respect, that you get your energy from people. And that, kind of being out and about, and something, obviously 4 years ago we had the experience of not being able to be out and about and doing everything on a video call. And video calls are better than phone calls, which are better than nothing at all. But nothing beats being in the same physical environment for me. And I do, I'm kind of pushing against anyone who expects people, I guess, in a different context, in the office-based context, rather than an operational role in a transport company. But hybrid working, I don't think is going anywhere, Sarah. I think, and any organisation that's pushing for 5 days a week in the office, I just don't think that is something which is going to work for everybody. But I do think having that opportunity to have everyone in the same place and get energy from each other, I think, is important.
Yeah, you can't meet face to face. My world was very strange. I came back to work from my second maternity leave in March 2020. And so actually, whilst most people I know were then starting to work from home more and more, I was going back to work. And as operations director at the time, there was, it was never did it enter my thinking that I would do anything other than go to work to be with the volunteers. And they were all volunteers at that time that were keeping what was a tiny kind of percentage of the normal Lothian service going. And so, I look back at that time and think how lucky I was and how much it would have impacted on me if I hadn't had the kind of job where I needed to go to work to do it properly. So, I think, there's still the impact of the kind of home hybrid working pattern. We see it, you see it in passenger trains, you see it in recruitment. There's so many different kind of aspects of it. And I think it's good now that it's settling. But I think there's still maybe a bit of water to go under the bridge. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think so. So speaking of things that have changed, and we've kind of moved into the part of our conversation where I say to you, if you were in charge of the whole industry and how it works, what changes would you like to see, Sarah? What would be the 3 things that you would say need to be done differently in order to make the industry fit for the future?
What a great question. So I would start with more recognition for the industry and the part that it plays, facilitating economies, facilitating lives. And I've heard it now more and more from politicians, ministers, that it's undervalued. And I think great to see that kind of shift, I guess, in terms of their perception. So recognition for the industry. I would start within that with the role of bus driver. That's a vital, but quite, that can be a really tough job. And so I'd like to see it elevated in terms of the kudos that role is given. And then my second point, I think, would lead on from that, and that would be to make travelling by bus completely destigmatised. So at Lothian, we're really lucky, and I describe our business all the time as being destigmatised. So I would say we've got passengers from all walks of life, from all parts of the city travelling on our network. And actually, when you see what can be achieved when you've got that in place, I think actually if we saw that in other cities, then we'd have this kind of galvanising of that behaviour and potentially the global shift change and the climate targets. I think that might start to realise a lot of that. So that would be my 2 kind of industry, if you like, related points. And then the third, I would say, would be around young people. So I've got 3 little girls myself, and young as they are, I can see from the kind of school side of things that there is a gap between that leaving school, we talked about it, leaving university even, and entering the world of work. So I think there being kind of more synergy, if you like, between what you do at school and how we learn, and how that then translates when you enter the world of work. And the example I always give is, if you think about school, quite often you're tested in a 2 or a 3 hour period. When it comes to exams, you're on your own. Everything is based on what is basically a tiny snapshot in time, versus the world of work, where usually you're in a team, you've got people around you, you're not expected to know everything. There's a huge kind of emphasis on bringing together people's strengths, and it doesn't have to be that everybody has all the same things to get to contribute. So actually, my third thing would be around something where there was just more understanding of kind of practical application from an education point of view through to the world of work, and how you would bring that together. Because I think the transport industry is such a great place for young people. There's so much opportunity, and it is, I think, one of those places where once you're in it, you realise just how much there is to kind of gain from it, to add yourself, but also to take as a kind of fulfillment thing.
Yeah, I agree, completely agree. Definitely on the same sheet as where my head is. I think I've been banging on for a while now around the need for the transport industry to change the narrative. And we know, I think, as you know, my business, we work with rail clients, we work with bus clients. And I think both need to be focusing so much more in the outward communication around, it's not just about the trains and it's not just about the buses. It's about the people that make all that happen. But ultimately, it's like, what is it making happen? So it's not, for me, it's what you were saying in relation to the economy. It's about community. It's what do we use transport for? What is the output of that? And being recognised as an industry sector that supports the UK industrial strategy. It's not just about having a transport strategy. It's about how do we grow the economy and the part that transport has to play in that, which then kind of knocks on to your third point around being more attractive to young people as a career option. And I think we need to be much better at that. I think we're in competition with lots of other sectors, and I know I've got official figures in terms of the workforce from the rail side. I don't have those from the bus side in terms of how many people are eligible to retire in the next 5 years. So in rail, it's 30% of the workforce. It's a lot of people. And yet we've got less than 4% of the workforce who are age 25 and younger. So we're not putting enough in at that end of the hopper, and we're losing quite a lot of people off the other end. So making it more attractive to young people, there's some brilliant stuff being done. I don't know if you've come across, there's an organisation called the Purpose Coalition, and they work across all industries in the UK with an objective of breaking down barriers and bringing people, communities, society together. And industry has a huge part to play in that in relation to getting people ready for work. So exactly to your point, it's like, how do we include people, young people? How do we do the work experience? And we get back to a process where we're giving young people real work experience before they've left school, before they decide on a career, so they can see what work looks like. Because when you're at school, you don't know, do you?
No, exactly. And I think it's down to business to reach out and to bridge the gap that I'm talking about. We've been working with a social enterprise called Powering Futures. They go with us into schools, and we are doing a kind of like a challenge piece with them. We've done things like they've come in, they've worked with our apprentices and done a phenomenal job of just building up their confidence and getting them to a point where they not only can complete a project and give an answer on a particular question that we set, but also they've enhanced their communication skills and their confidence and their presentation. And I think that, so just bringing in a partner who speaks the language, fluent, in another way that from how we would have kind of naturally approached it, the benefits that has brought. And I see now, someone said to me the other day, it's great to see so many more young people coming to work at Lothian, and the dynamic changing, because it is a blend. We're not trying to suddenly have one group of people, versus another
No.
in any sense. Actually, it's that blend. That's what helps us evolve and develop. And we're 105 years old. So, my job is to make sure we're here for another 105 years.
Absolutely.
So actually,
Yeah.
like that all fits together for me, definitely.
Yeah. And I guess as well, that kind of blend in terms of your team who are serving the passengers are reflective of the passengers then that they're serving, aren't they? If you've got that blend of people from different backgrounds, different age groups, different stages of their career.
Yes.
How do you think, on that second point, Sarah, around destigmatising public transport, how do you think you've achieved that at Lothian? Is there like a top tip that you can share with the audience in terms of something that you think's made a real difference on that?
It's so many different factors coming together, I would say. So, and it goes back, it probably goes back decades, back to when Edinburgh had trams the first time round, so back to the kind of 40s and 50s, the network connected north, south, and east, west parts of the city where there was a real mix of affluence, even in those days. And actually, that network, to some extent, still is so relevant. I think that's where, so that I always, when I describe it, I do always say that, the core high frequency, good value, reliability, like all of those factors are hugely important, and have allowed us to, I guess, build the network around on those very strong principles.
Yes, yeah. So there's a kind of, if I'm picking up right, there's kind of a learned behaviour that's been there a very long time, and presumably at the outset, some excitement about the tram and having this ability to be able to move around the city in a different way, which would appeal to everybody in different ways.
Yeah, so I mean, Edinburgh trams decades ago,
Yes,
which then were completely phased out, and we've now had a tram service again since 2014. And I think in Edinburgh it's just natural and accepted that you will travel by public transport, and so that then is an enabler for decisions like one car in a household instead of two, no car instead of one, and so it's not a particular demographic of people who are traveling by bus. It's everybody. And I mean, I always talk about making intelligent travel decisions. I think there are journeys depending on your age and your stage of life and what you're juggling in terms of your priorities. There are journeys that absolutely you might need to make by car. Equally, there are journeys that we can make by public transport. And so when I speak to people about it, would say, think about what you've got going on over the course of a day or a week, and think about those journeys where you can use public transport. And so that then, as I say, that then enables that. Could I manage without a car? Could I manage with fewer cars in my household than I have currently? And that then is that kind of, if everybody did that, then actually we would save the car kilometres that we're trying to save for targets. We would generate the modal shift onto public transport that then would allow operators to take investment decisions and frequency decisions, that grows the networks.
Yes, yeah. And there's something there, isn't there, in relation to, again, kind of coming back to this whole industry, the kind of the UK industrial strategy, which feeds in the house building, the new house development ambitions that the government have got, and the importance of that joining up with public transport. So you go onto these new housing estates now, and the driveways are not big enough to fit all the cars on, because they might have, this kind of two parents, let's say kind of average household, there'll be two adults in the house, car each. And then as the children grow up, they've got a car each too. And it's kind of, and we have in our house, we've got 3 cars. In my defence, we do live in quite a rural area and we have no bus route. So I would have to walk 2 miles to a bus stop to be able to get to public transport. And there are no street lights, and there's a lot of farmers around here, so I'm not walking out in my best shoes, Sarah, shall we say. If I was going to a work meeting, that just wouldn't happen. But that kind of joined up thinking for new housing developments that says we're not giving planning permission to this until we know that it's going to be served by proper public transport routes to enable people, that first and last mile piece included in that. It's kind of how are we going to get people around and give them an obvious choice other than just to get in the car. Yeah, so much to do there, so much to do. Thank you for sharing those, and I could talk to you for ages about all three of those. But again, in time-honoured fashion, I'm going to bring our conversation to a close by asking you one final question, which is around where you get your inspiration from. Do you know, you're doing a big job and you're doing a difficult job in an industry which is not always kind of seen as the darling of the politicians. So you're up against it day in, day out. On the odd occasion when you wake up in the morning and you think, oof, what inspires you? Where do you go to get your energy up, to get that kind of spring back in your step?
I go to a saying that my granny would have said to me over and over and over, which is what you know will fill a book and what you don't know will fill a library. And so that for me is a constant reminder. I've said already, you don't know what you don't know. So I would say my inspiration comes from the smallest of things, if you like, in that I'm constantly seeking to develop my own understanding and knowledge. So podcasts and audio books and all this kind of thing. But more in the conversations that I have with people, and that could be everybody from my own little people to the people that I work with, to those around me, personally as well. I would say, I always try and leave conversations better than I found them as much as I can. And so I think, just always being open to, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm trying to fill 2 books instead of just one.
I've never heard that expression before, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And that kind of, continuous learning. I personally think that's what it's what makes life interesting, because you never know everything. You can never know everything. And in my experience, people are always capable of surprising you, and more often than not in a positive way. And even if it's not in a positive way, you still learn something in the process. So
and don't get me wrong, it's not that there aren't challenges. I just choose, I would say, to put that lens on most of the time. Obviously, I can't manage it all the time. The lens that is, you're a main character in a very important, interesting Netflix, whatever, something that's going to get extended for more than one season. Compared to, oh my goodness, how are we going to, what are we going to do next, or what's going to get flung at us next? Like, our world is full of challenge. I think when you work in transport, that absolutely is what you're dealing with things all the time. It's how you choose to look at them. That's what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. What a brilliant place to bring the conversation to a close. A huge thank you to you, Sarah, for taking the time to share your story and to give us some real thoughtful insights into how you think the industry could be better. I think there's certainly get 100% agreement from me on all of those things. And I love the quotes that you've shared with us. You've shared some corkers as we've gone through, and ones that I haven't heard before. So I love that, because I've learnt from this conversation. So a huge thank you from me to you for taking part in the Intuitive Insights podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for inviting me on.
My huge thanks to Sarah for sharing her career story and her 3 wishes for the future of the transport industry. Please do join us again for the next episode of Intuitive Insights. Thanks for joining us.